Okay, thank you very much. We will try to answer that question in the course of the presentation, and we'll have some discussion afterwards with you, according to the ideas. And it is quite true, there have been in the last 2 years, I would say, 25 delegations coming from Denmark to Toronto, with each time 75, 85 people. So the reason I'm here is that when I saw the next schedule, which is another 10 in the next while, I said I was not going to meet with any of them until I could come here and see what's going on, because otherwise they're just visiting us, and I don't know whether, I guess I wanted to put pressure on them to take some action. So most of the, I certainly don't want to tell you how to do things or what to do. But I tend also to be a little bit pushy about the good ideas, which means that I'd be pushy so I'll be clear. And of course you decide whether you like them or not. But we also find, as is the case here, I'm already finding this week and I knew it, that a lot of things we're talking about are things that you are doing or starting to do anyway. So it's not like I'm telling you you should be doing something that you're not doing. I'm interacting with you about you doing things that we're also doing. So in that sense, it's quite a good rapport. This presentation I'll make available afterwards. You can have it as this is a keynote presentation, but as a PowerPoint, so to speak. And let me say a little bit about the nature of the work. I will put it into what we've accomplished, but especially into what's new, the immediate new things. But the work that we do, and I have about 15 people in 2 different groups. They're overlapping, and the concepts are overlapping as well as the people. And the main feature of our work is that we concentrate on doing things and then understanding them and doing more. So it is very strongly on the action side, on the application side. If I put it in one way, we go from practice to theory, not the other way around. So we do lots of practice in partnerships with schools and school systems, and then I write lots of books because I do lots of practice, and the ideas come that way, and I feed them back, and we continue to do this. So the 2 groups we have overlapping, one is called capacity building, which you're familiar with the term, and I'll try to make that clear in the course of that. So the capacity building group is, if we define capacity, it is, one part of it is to increase the pedagogical effectiveness of teaching and learning. So there's a very strong, what are the capacities, the skills, the pedagogies. And the other part of it, which is not so clear unless you say it, is the capacity to bring about change, which is, so there's 2 things, the capacity to improve pedagogy, and then the capacity to bring about change. So leadership for change, and those are 2 different things. You can be very good at one and terrible at the other. You can be an expert in pedagogy and not be very good at causing change. Or you could perhaps push for a lot of change but not have good ideas, which is a problem. So we combine the 2. That's what makes it so strong. And the other group, we call the new pedagogies for deep learning. And it's very specific. I'll come to that. We have set up a project a year and a half ago that's gaining great momentum, that's based on the following framework. Having 10 clusters of approximately 100 schools each in 10 different countries. So that's 1,000 schools. And there's nothing magical about 1,000, but it's a nice number to remember. It's easier to remember. And it's not always 100, but we have already 7 countries. And I'm going back tomorrow to Toronto to have our big, what we call Deep Learning Lab in Seattle on Monday to Thursday. And the countries that are involved now, Australia, there's 80 from Melbourne schools and 20 from Tasmania, so they form a cluster of 100. Canada, We have about 15 districts. We're organized by districts or municipalities, and there's probably 130 schools altogether, 5 or 7 schools in each district, for example. So Canada, we have Finland, who joined last year with 100 schools, but they want all their schools to be involved because they're transforming the curriculum in line with what we're doing. So we have very strong relationships there. Netherlands is another group that's involved. In New Zealand has clusters of schools. Japan is about to join. Uruguay is a member. A little bit in the United States we're growing. So it's not, the idea is not to grow keep going, but it's to have, and you can see when I emphasize doing, that if we have this framework of working and we have these schools that are involving and completing things, that we have really something very important to contribute, because we want to do things that get implemented, but we want them also to be part of this changing the whole system. And I want to give you one other concept that we've, perhaps I just named a little bit of the work, and then we'll get down to the specifics of this agenda. We have, as you know, built this work in Ontario to start with. Ontario is 13 million people, so a little over twice as large as yours, I guess. 4,900 schools, 72 districts or municipalities. And we worked there for the last 11 years to take a system that was stagnant and made it very strong, I think. So we worked there. We worked in California, whereas 43 million people, the whole system, governor, state superintendent, 1,009 districts. And we work always at all levels. We work at the local school level, at the middle level, and at the government level to try to make some alignments. And then the third country we're working on quite fully is New Zealand. 2,500 schools in the whole country. And it's a very interesting case for the change part, what we're talking about, because they have, 25 years ago or so, they passed a new policy called Tomorrow's Schools. And they then took away the responsibilities from the municipalities or the districts and said every school will be autonomous. Will have its own small board, appoint its principal and teachers. And so they've had 25 years of doing that. And what's happened is that some schools took advantage of the autonomy. Other schools didn't know how to do that, so the gap has increased between the higher and low performer. The disadvantaged students have not gained as much. And so the government, a year and a half ago, and this is when I got involved, decided that this has to change. So they created a new strategy, a policy, that's called Investing in Educational Success, is the formal name. But what it is it's a, they actually started it as a mandate. They said every school of the 2,500 should be in a network of approximately 10 schools and should have an executive principal, so the language they used, to head the network. And that network of 10 or so schools on the average, 250 of them, should be then the strategy to change the whole system for the better. And New Zealand, in one respect, is a little bit like Denmark, which is schools don't like authorities to tell them what to do. So the teachers union, the principals union, they were part of the same union, basically said, we're not participating. The government actually put in a lot of money, $369 million. They said, none of our members will take these jobs. We don't care if you're going to give us more money. That's not going to buy us involvement. How about the wrong driver, just to put your work in perspective. But I got involved then right at the beginning. And my assignment was this, to help I work for the minister and the ministry, to help the government implement this policy. And then my second assignment was work with teachers and principals to prevent the policy from being implemented. So this is what we call working both sides of the street at the same time. And what they did, and what was very important in doing this, is that instead of making it a requirement, they made it voluntary. That's step one. And then instead of imposing it like this, they created a joint initiative to put out what would be the guidelines for doing this. And they negotiated it, the values, the way it would be done. And so they, over an 8-month period, have now successfully come at that. And they're creating, they call them COLs, Communities of Learning. And if you know the PLC term within schools, the COL is like that, except it's a network. The schools are moving into networks of, depending on the negotiations and the choice, between 5 and 15 schools in network. But virtually soon, within 12 months, I could say 100% of the schools will be in small networks. And so we are working with the networks now to, and each one is free to choose what it focuses on, but the requirements are, it must focus on pedagogy, it must link it to achievement, doesn't say what exactly the part, but it has to be achievement. It must develop capacity, and then and it also focus on all of the students, and examine progress and make corrections and learn from each other within that. So you see, you get the picture here of this is about whole system change. And I know that your project and the funding of the 29 demonstration schools, one can say right away that 29 demonstration schools will not change the system. You get little pieces. And it's okay to start, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just pointing out the obvious, that this is a baby step to changing the system. So